Hey friends, the date I'm filming this is Good Friday. So I hope everyone has been having a lovely long bank holiday weekend, Easter. Yeah, things are looking nice, good. In the UK we are going through our roadmap to lead us out of lockdown, so fingers crossed that everything runs smoothly from that, goes successfully. Anyway, with that said, let's go on to today's video. So today I am doing my March wrap up. I'm quite content with the overall content that I've read. I feel like I possibly say that quite often, which is a good thing. I mean, yeah, it's nice. As usual, I think I'm going to start, I don't know why I feel so rusty today. I'm going to start with not slouching. I better get my posture situated. God, you can call me out if I start slouching again. I really should sit on a chair. I'm going to start off with the format, just roughly. I read one book from the library, one NetGalley book, 5 physical books, one that was backlisted, and for me I count that as like 2 years plus, like, so books older than 2 years, if that makes sense. 2 new releases, and for me I count that as from 2020 onwards at the moment, and 6 recently hauled, again as recent as 2020 where I've hauled them. In terms of genre, I read 5 that were fantasy, 2 that were non-fiction, sort of memoir, poetry, literary, and in terms of age range, 3 were adult and 3 were apparently children middle grade. So let's see what I read. So the first book was a buddy read. I could have squeezed this in at the end of February, but I just had a couple of pages left and I ended up finishing it like the first day of March, so I'll just count it in this one. And that is The Rogue by Trudy Canavan, which is the second book in the Traitor Spy trilogy, and I read this with Deborah from Hills of Books on Instagram. In this trilogy, it's kind of like a sequel trilogy to The Black Magicians, and we're following on, I don't want to really spoil it because a lot has happened in like these 6 books, but we're following on the story from there, but it's like 20 years have passed. So in the original trilogy we're following Susanna, and she's our like main character, and she finds that she is able to do magic, which is shocking to her because she feels like the people that control magic and teach it, the guild, are gonna catch her and like get her because she's from a lower standing. She lives in like the slums, and it's only people from the houses and those in power that can learn how to use magic and stuff like that. So yeah, the story ensues. I have enjoyed it. This one I gave a 4 out of 5 stars. It was released in 2011 and it's classed as like adult high fantasy and published by Orbit. So this isn't really going to make much sense if you guys haven't read like this far, but I'm trying to be as brief as possible, but just highlighting what I liked, disliked, you know, without spoiling anything. So I loved seeing the traitor's domain in this one. This is a plot point that develops in this trilogy. I also enjoyed seeing the ways around the limitations of the magic system. For me, when it comes to fantasy, I love learning new magic systems and seeing what the authors can create. So seeing like what can be bent, where their limits are, is very interesting, and I like seeing that fleshed out in this book. And yeah, I was very intrigued for the direction of a new character that was introduced in this book, so that was a 4-star read for me. I then read 4 Children and It by Jacqueline Wilson. This was like a carryover from when I was completing my Wilsonphon readathon. I say I mean my like reading vlog that I did for the Wilsonphon reading challenge. Oh my god. And yeah, I finished this one up. So this is the one that I borrowed from the library. I gave this a 4 stars. It was released in 2012 by Puffin Books, and it's like middle grade fantasy sort of thing, and it's basically inspired by The 5 Children in It by Nesbit, which I've not read. I've not seen the film, and yeah, I didn't really feel like I needed to read the source material to understand the inspiration, but it's something that I would definitely consider going back to, just to kind of see, you know, the original concept. I remember being interested in watching the film as well ages ago when it came out. I just guess never got around to it. The story itself was very fun. I enjoyed seeing the familial relationships develop. Yeah, it was a load of fun, really. Next up, I read Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab. This is the second in the City of Ghosts, I believe, the trilogy now. I think the third and, yeah, I'm pretty sure final book has come out this year or is coming out this year. I'm not too sure. I gave this one a 3 stars. It released in 2019 by Scholastic and is like YA fantasy. So the whole concept of this series is we're following Cass, who is she basically can see ghosts, but the ironic and funny thing is that her parents are writers. Like they write about ghost stories and history around the ghost stories and sightings, and they've just started in the first book a TV show where they go into the most haunted places and kind of giving you some information, kind of getting the folklore around the supernatural, paranormal kind of stories, but they don't believe that Cass can actually see ghosts, so it's quite ironic, really. And in this one we are following her in Paris as they go to, you know, the most haunted places in Paris and kind of unearth those stories. So yeah, this was very enjoyable. It was a nice lighter read to break up my harder reads, like whether it's high fantasy or another book I'm going to be talking about shortly, which is like kind of non-fiction-esque, but like the topics were kind of difficult. Yeah, it makes me want to explore, which I know obviously can't do much of now, but like the places are described so richly, like I would love to see them, you know. Maybe not necessarily the super scary places, but nevertheless it sounds so alluring. But I will say again, I think I had this same issue in the first book. There are too many references of one like pop culture thing, specifically Harry Potter, but the annoying thing is that she likes Cass likes superheroes and stuff like that. Well, her friend likes superheroes, and I feel like that could be something they could talk about a bit more as well. Teenage girls aren't just like obsessed with one thing, and I feel like it's almost unbelievable how much she goes on about like Harry Potter. I don't know, like if it was anything else I would say the same. It's just so blaringly overused, do you know what I mean? And it's just a bit of an irritance for me personally. Next up I had another buddy read, and I read this one with Gemma from Read a Book Gem. She's also on BookTube and Instagram, and this one was Who They Was by Gabriel Krolls, and unfortunately I think we both settled on around 2 stars. It just really wasn't what we were expecting, unfortunately. This was released on the 3rd of September 2020 by Fourth Estate, and it's like a memoir, adult kind of themes. So we're following Gabriel, and early on we both kind of figured out that it was probably somewhat autobiographical, but it wasn't really pointed out. Like, we didn't go into it expecting this to be someone's life story, like we thought it was a story, you know. So that made me personally hesitant in the fact that I didn't enjoy it, because I'm like, well, this is someone's real life, do you know what I mean, once I realised. But it was just so difficult. We're following him basically, his life story, how he simultaneously lives, you know, this life of, you know, gang life, dealing drugs, robberies, killings, and at the same time going to uni to get his English degree, and he's quite intelligent in the way he thinks of life and discusses topics, and just how they fuse together. And I think both myself and Gemma assumed that because of the existence of this book, we thought that we were going or heading into a direction where Gabriel had this sort of awakening of, right, this isn't the life for me, and has this turnaround. So we were kind of always hoping that something was going to happen for the better, and it didn't really work that way. I will say it was an interesting perspective, contrasting the different aspects of Gabriel's life, education versus crime, but I generally felt that it was just like a big boast of all the criminal activity that he was talking about, and the majority of the time him not getting caught for it. And yeah, it just didn't have the message I was anticipating. Like, I guess he kind of changed somewhat for the better, but I don't see this book as like repellent of the activity that he was doing, because it just sounds boastful and like, yeah, I can get away with it, you know, maybe someone else can get away with it. In a way, that's how I read it. And yeah, it just it wasn't for me, unfortunately. This one was a NetGalley book, so I do thank the publishers and authors and that for allowing me a e-copy, but unfortunately this one was not for me. Next up, another book that I was a little bit unsure on was Piranesi by Susanna Clarke. I've got a reading vlog, actually, I forgot to say, on a few of these books, probably like the latter half. So if you do want more detailed thoughts as I'm reading them, then feel free to check out that video. But yeah, this is her second book. I've not read her debut. Due to my uncertainty on this one, I probably won't be reading her debut, especially because it's such a chunker, and I struggled somewhat with this being quite small. I'd imagine I'd struggle with a bigger one if it's of the same sort of vein. And yeah, this one I gave 3 stars. This released in 2020 by Bloomsbury, and it's like literary adult. This is a difficult one because a lot of people say it's best to kind of go in knowing very little, and that's sort of what I did. Like, I had a general vibe. I had already read the blurb, but the blurb, to be honest, doesn't really give a lot away anyway. It's very cryptic sounding. Yeah, I think I'll leave most of my thoughts for that vlog if you're interested. It's a very unique kind of creation, but it's also, I had an uncomfortably confusing feeling throughout the entirety of it, pretty much. So I'll leave that there. Another book that was in that reading vlog is Pan's Labyrinth, The Labyrinth of the Fawn by Guillermo del Toro and Cornelia Funk. This is I'm gonna say it now, this was my favourite book of the month, honestly. I adore the movie, and I have adored the movie since I was like, I don't know when it came out, but I think I was like 12 or younger. I think I might have been younger when I first saw it, and I was like, wow, this is scary and amazing. And I've watched it repeatedly since then. I absolutely adore it. I've fallen in love with Del Toro as like a director. And yeah, so when this came out, I was excited, put it on my list and got it for Christmas. And yeah, I'm so happy to have got this. This one I gave it 5 stars. It released in 2019 by Bloomsbury and is like adult historical fiction, I would say. I'll leave my general thoughts for that vlog, but the idea of Pan's Labyrinth is, we're in Spain in, I think it's the 40s. Yeah, and it's like a fascist kind of Spain. And there's some civil wars brewing, those who agree with the way of fascism, dictatorship, and those who don't, and they're kind of battling on this, like, in the country. And this little girl, Ophelia, her mother has married like the captain of this fascist army residing in the country, as in countryside. And yeah, she is depressed, so depressed pretty much. She's not happy with this new life. She misses her dad, who died the year before, and her mother is now pregnant with this captain who's very cruel, very vindictive and evil, I would say. The mother's now pregnant with his child. And Ophelia kind of gets lost in this fairy tale, but it's quite dark. She may possibly be a princess of the underworld, and when she meets this fawn, he kind of gives her all the information that he thinks she needs to know without giving her the full picture of what's to come. And yeah, it's just a very haunting story, kind of gothic in tone. It's nice to have a mixture of sort of real life evil, you know, with the wars and everything like that, amongst like a backdrop of a fantastical sort of creepy fairy tale story. I adore it. Check out the film, guys. Check out the book. Fantastic. And the last book I read, we started with Trudy Canavan, we are ending with Trudy Canavan. This was another buddy read with Deborah again, and this is the Traitor Queen, which is the final book in the Traitor Spy trilogy. There is a prequel, like a random prequel book, I don't know if it's a novella or a full book, that I think we're going to try and hunt down and read together at some point. I don't think we're in any rush, but yeah, I think both of us unfortunately were disappointed with this as a finale, Deborah more so than myself. But yeah, this one I gave it 3 stars. I think all the other books I've pretty much been like a 4 stars, except maybe the very first book in the very first trilogy, if I remember correctly. But yeah, the majority have been settling on like a 4 stars, and so this one, I felt the difference, you know. It was released in 2012 by Orbit, and again, it's adult fantasy. So this basically, as you can imagine, concludes and wraps up the whole kind of building plot from this trilogy, but also the events that kind of started everything in the original trilogy of the Black Magicians trilogy. How many times can I say that? I felt like for the characters, I loved how far they had come. Seeing a lot of them, especially like some of the OGs, develop and kind of change for the better, or sometimes for the worse. Like, it was really quite rewarding, I would say, following them for such a long time. For example, I loved how respected Susanna became. Yeah, I thought that was amazing. I enjoyed seeing in which direction all the building events were going to go, but I feel like for a finale, it just didn't feel that, not that final, but as in it didn't feel very climactic. It was pretty underwhelming. Like, the conflict didn't occur often enough, or rather soon enough, and when it did occur, it wasn't very satisfactory. There was some very jarring editing, I feel, as well, that just really threw me off, and I couldn't, like, it didn't make sense. I felt like I'd missed a chunk. Like, how did we get from that to this? Like, yeah, it was just a bit strange. So unfortunately, I would say I definitely enjoyed this, but it just didn't feel on par with the other books, especially for the last book. It just didn't feel like it hit that level, you know. So yeah, that is it for my wrap up. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what you thought, what your favourite and least favourite book of the month might have been, and I'll catch you in another video soon. Bye.